economy in general here. And so we had started off the three biggies yesterday, and we left off the third biggie. We got through two of the three biggies. And why I say biggie is that, you know, almost with every policy decision, policymakers should be mindful of these three things that influence the economy and contribute to kind of our overall well-being in a sense. Certainly not the determining factor, but importance with overall welfare of the economy. So what was number one? Yeah, Tim?
Increasing our GDP.
Yes, increasing our GDP. So that begs the big question, what's the R? What's so real about real GDP? That would be a great midterm question. What is so real about real GDP? So yesterday we made the distinction between nominal GDP and real GDP. Real GDP is the one we're keeping our focus on for this biggie. Yeah.
It's like all your income added together.
It's all the income added together. That doesn't address the R part though.
Okay.
So I'm glad you brought that up. So the GDP part, whether it's nominal GDP or whether it's real GDP, there is a reflection on income. So the real part is a little bit different. What was the real part, Jesse?
The main difference is it doesn't account for price changes?
Yes, okay, so prices have been filtered out, right? So inflation and prices have been filtered out. When you guys hear the word real, I want you to think a glass of beer, of real beer that you're putting down your throat. A real chicken wing that you're eating, right? A real chicken wing, a real beer, a real slice of pizza. Real GDP is reflecting the actual quantities of things people are eating and enjoying in the economy. So it's not, don't think of it as dollars and prices, because that's exactly what we're trying to separate. It is a dollar value, so I gotta be careful there. So it's measured in dollars, but it's really reflecting the quantity of beer, the quantity of chicken wings, the quantity of pizza. So this real part, so kind of the key point here, let's put in here. So real means that inflation has been filtered out so that real GDP reflects the quantity of quantities, maybe I should put here, the quantities of goods and services in the nation for that year. So it's a real important distinction. So by looking at that, we're now thinking more that this is better reflecting the well-being of people, at least in the terms of material things. How much food is out there, how much healthcare, how much lawyer services, how much dental services, how many haircuts, how much pizza, how much beer, how much chicken wings. You know, the production of the nation, the quantities of things is being reflected in real GDP. Okay, any last final questions or comments on that concept?
What is GS?
Goods, this is my shorthand for goods and services. So this is final, I'll just put a little extra here. Final goods and services. Okay, somebody other than Tim, biggie number 2.
Low and stable inflation.
Low and stable inflation,
Oh,
good. So number 2 is low and stable inflation. So now notice how this is hitting the quantity part, and this is now hitting the prices. Let's try to keep the prices of things low and stable. Low and stable. The reason this is important will become clear hopefully in about, might be 4 weeks from now. It's like our second to last chapter when we do money and banking. So it turns out the government is in control of our money supply. And if the government prints off more of this for weapons of mass destruction, oh, I could use a bomb or two. Hey, let's go buy a bomb, right? So now I go to Guns R Us, I'm the government, and I go to Guns R Us and I buy some weapons of mass destruction with money that was pulled out of thin air, not money that was earned from a paycheck like you guys are doing over here. Remember, you sold resources to businesses and got a paycheck. You had to pay a little taxes, but after taxes, now you went to Guns R Us and bought yourself an AR-15. That's different than if the government, right? We didn't touch the resource base. It was just fabricated, and then now it goes to Guns R Us. If the government does that, which they do in different ways that we'll explain later, it causes inflation. It causes prices to be high and unstable when the government is irresponsible with our money supply. Long story short, a lot of fun stuff to talk about there. But I wanted to kind of give you the motivation of why that one's up there, is that we need to be monitoring that stuff as well. So low and stable inflation, the main thing from last week was that we learned how to measure inflation, and then we spent some time yesterday reviewing that with the consumer price index and the GDP deflator, right? We learned how to filter out the price effect and the quantity effect. Those two things kind of went together in how we treated them so that we could separate out the quantity effect is what we really care about. The price effect isn't as important over kind of the long term because it'll work itself out. Okay, any questions or comments there? All right, biggie number 3, the new one, where we start off today, which is really chapter 8, by the way, is once we get in here. We want unemployment to be low. Low unemployment. I'll just leave it like that. Low unemployment. So we'd like people who want to have a job that they can actually have a job. And so is our goal 0? You think 0 unemployment should be the goal?
Not necessarily.
Okay, not necessarily why?
Because there are just some people that are incapable of working certain jobs for certain reasons.
And should be fired?
No, it's just maybe they can't work.
Okay, they're choosing not to work then.
Can't.
Or can't work, okay. Madison?
Well, people choose not to work too.
People choose not to work, yeah. Give me some examples of people who choose not to work.
Stay-at-home mom.
Stay-at-home mom, retired people, 2-year-old kids, 1-month-old babies, right? So we have a certain fraction of the population that's not working, and so who do we consider unemployed, right? Who are the unemployed? Well, the unemployed are going to be people who want to work but aren't working. So our definition for unemployment, so the unemployed, let's put the number of people unemployed. Number unemployed are, and I'll probably get rid of the screen here pretty shortly too. I was thinking about putting one thing up, but I'm not sure if I'll get there. The number unemployed is the number of people greater than or equal to 16 years of age. Number of people greater than 16 years of age, non-institutionalized, Non-institutionalized. Anybody know what that one means?
Not
Not
in prison.
in jail. No, not necessarily not in school. School would be okay. But jail. Like if you're in jail, you might say, oh, I'd like to be working. Gosh, if I didn't kill those people, maybe I could be working and I really want to work. Let me out of this cell, right? We're not going to count those people in the unemployment rate. So also hospitalized. If people are in some sort of asylum or, held back from being, out into the general public. So non-institutionalized, let's just put not in jail or hospitalized, kind of long-term. So now we've got a fraction of the population that's greater than or equal to 16 years of age, non-institutionalized, comma, looking for work. Let's put actively seeking work is more of the term. Actively seeking work, but not working. All right, so that puts into picture what we call also the working age population. So of all of the people out there, we have the working age population, and those people who are, the key part here is that they're looking but not working. They want to work. All right, so here's the one I'll put up to kind of highlight this, and we'll put some more on the board. Let's start up top here. So we start off with the civilian population, 16 years of age and older. If you're not in the labor force, you might be a student, retiree, disabled, household workers. That means stay-at-home moms and dads, right? You're choosing to not be in the workforce. You're still working. That's why I think anybody who's stay-at-home mom, we want to say that you're working, but you're not working for pay, right? So you're not getting that income. So you're not in what we call the labor force. The civilian labor force then is composed of people who are working, which could be self-employed, part-time workers, full-time workers. And then we've got the people that are unemployed, which could be new entrants to the labor force, like our college graduates, who all of a sudden walk across the stage. Dun, 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 and then go, woohoo! I graduated. Oh crap, I need to get a job. As soon as you said I need to get a job, and you were thinking I need to start looking, you became unemployed, right? So you might have been a student before, but actively seeking employment now, or thinking you need to start the hunt, you all of a sudden magically became unemployed. So some people retire and then they unretire. How many people know that? Grandpa, grandma, they retired and then they're like, oh, I don't like retired life and I'm going to come back to work, right? So that's a kind of an example of a re-entrant into there. Lost your last job, quit your last job, or laid off. So if you lost your last job because you were fired, you were laid off, you quit your last job voluntarily, you just told your boss, take this job and shove it, but you're still looking for a new job, then you are unemployed. So that is our groups of people. Any questions on that? All right, so I think I'll keep this down before we get into that. I want to do one more thing then. Let's just jump right into the unemployment rate. Does anybody know what the unemployment rate for the nation is right now, approximately? So we've been hanging in around 4% for quite a while now, down to 3.6%. I think it's been as high as 4.1%. So historically, that's pretty low. And that's been an unusual factor around this whole COVID business and the economy with its ups and downs that we'll explore later, but the unemployment rate's been pretty low. So the unemployment rate, which I'll be using the symbol big U, the unemployment rate is equal to the number of people unemployed divided by the labor force. The number of people unemployed divided by the labor force. So in your community, for example, if you have 5 unemployed and a labor force of 100, that would mean you've got a 5 over 100 equals 5% unemployment. A 5% unemployment rate. And so to be in the labor force, you got to be the 16 years of age, the civilian population. So we've got some things here with the labor force. So the labor force is equal to the number unemployed plus the number employed. Sorry, maybe I should get rid of the screen, but I kind of want to show a couple more things there. So you guys can write this all the way across on your paper. I should have. The labor force is the number of people unemployed plus the number of people employed, which is what this picture is showing here. The civilian labor force, unemployed, employed. So we could also think about the employment rate. The employment rate one easy way to look at that would be to take 1 minus the unemployment rate. So from my example, 1 minus 0.05 equals 0.95. So we could say that the employment rate is 95% in my little example. So you can kind of go back and forth. All right, any questions so far? All right, let's look at this data here. So this was from February of 2020. So non-institutional civilian population, 16 years of age and older, 260 million people. So 260 million people in the United States, 16 years of age and older. I kind of wish they put the population. What's the population of the United States roughly?
7 million?
Nope. Lot bigger. This is 260. This is in millions here. So we're at 260 million with just the non-institutionalized 16 years of age and older. Roughly, what's the population of the United States? 800, no? 500 is getting closer, but low. 450, low. 400, lower. 350 is real close. 300, go ahead. Good, 330 million, yeah. So if you guys roundly, think 300 million roughly, 330 is closer to where we're actually at today. But my point in bringing that up is that if we look at this number at 200, let's just call it 260 million, that means we have approximately 70 million babies and people under the age of 16. That's the fraction of kids that we have, defining a kid anyway as the less than 16 years of age. So that is a lot of people, right, in the United States. And then 95 million are people who aren't in the labor force at all. So out of the 330 million total, we get down to people who could be working. So sometimes we call this the working age population. People who could be working, they may be working, they may be not. But the population, the working age population, 260, and we've got 95 million of those people that aren't in the labor force, 160 who are, 158 who are working, 5 million that aren't working, and then we got our unemployment rate. Let me drop to the bottom here. The unemployment rate at 3.5% back in 2020. Okay, so questions on that? All right, so a couple other statistics that are in here. The labor force participation rate. So those are some interesting statistics. In fact, let me see if the book has it laid out here a little. All right, I wonder if it's on the other side of this page here. Yes. Okay. So there's our different ratios that we have. So the unemployment rate we've already covered, labor force participation rate, number of people 16 years of age and older seeking or either employed or seeking as a percentage of the total civilian population 16 years of age and older. The reason I was hesitating, I didn't want to throw in too much. In other books, we call that the working age population. So we'll call that the civilian population. In fact, I am going to do it a little bit different. So go put this in your notes. Working age, I think it's in the books as well. Working age population, because it's got a fun name, the WAP. The working age population is what they're fully defining there. So the total civilian, what do we mean by civilian? Who are we not including, do you think? Military, good, yeah. So we're excluding military members for this calculation, right? Because they've signed a contract, essentially entered the military, and so they've kind of intentionally taking themselves out of the workforce as we're defining it, but of course we know they're still doing work. Kind of like our moms and dads stay at home, there's still work being done. So total civilian population, greater than 16 years of age. Greater than or equal to 16 years old. So we're going to call that the WAP, working age population. And so the labor force participation rate looks at the fraction of those people who are choosing to work. So the labor force participation rate, LF participation rate, is kind of nice to look at. We take the labor force as a fraction of the WAP. The labor force has people that are employed and unemployed. unemployed as we defined it. So of our pool of people 16 years of age and older, how many are choosing to work? So this one's kind of interesting to look at over time to see if there's been changes in in the culture maybe, or other things. Do you think, let me give you an example. Do you think more or less 16-year-olds are in the workforce as opposed to 1955? Where do you think there was more 16-year-olds? Back in 1955 or in 2024? What do you think? 1955, more people working that are 16? Yeah, probably, right? So we kind of have these, cultural shifts. And then another thing I'll show you here shortly is women in the workforce. So we can look at women's labor force participation rate versus men's labor force participation rate. And we can kind of see, get a better feel for, in our economy, in our society, who's working and who's not working, and how has that changed over time is why some of these are nice to look at. So any questions on this particular statistic? So labor force participation rate, fraction of the population. Let's go ahead and just put it into words real quick. So this is the fraction of the WAP that wants to work, I'll put in parentheses, or is actually working, which kind of means they want to work, right? How much of our population is working or wants to work? Okay, and then how many of these people are actually employed? So the employment to population ratio. The employment to population ratio is, instead of using the labor force, we're taking the number of people employed, which is a large fraction of the labor force, 95% in the example that I used. So 95 people now, instead of using the full 100, the number of people unemployed divided by the WAP, the working age population. So as more people become unemployed, this statistic would start to fall. We'd have less people unemployed. All right, questions or comments there? All right, well, here is the unemployment rate from 1960 to 2020. And so this green line is the actual rate of unemployment. What do you think makes that go up and down? Why is it fluctuating so much, going up and down? And then I'll give you a little hint. What the heck went on there in 2020? Look at that. This is not like it ran off the page or something. This is not. This is high. What causes that to fluctuate around? Madison? Access to jobs, yes, especially with the COVID example, right? So access to jobs. So what's it kind of connected with? The unemployment rate. What happened during COVID? What happened? I'm sorry,
quarantine.
Quarantine, yes. So quarantine and access to jobs, right? So the government basically made it illegal to have some sort of jobs. A whole bunch of people went away. These bars here are related to economic downturns, which I'll define later, but real GDP going up and down. So the economy going through a recession. Each one of these yellow bars is when the economy went into a recession. There was a downturn. So when the economy's down and we're not making as much beer, pizza, and chicken wings, what happens to the unemployment rate? If the economy's down, real GDP is down, unemployment is up. So those two variables are negatively correlated with each other. Because the opposite's true too. When the economy starts to go up, when we're outside of these yellow bars, the unemployment rate starts to go down. We're starting to need more beer, pizza, and chicken wings, and therefore we need more people to make that stuff. And so there's this negative relationship between unemployment and the fluctuations in real GDP. So that's what's going on here. All right. This blue line here is kind of where we expect the economy to be. It is not necessarily the average level, but it can be related to that. So this line here kind of shows that there's some unemployment that is natural for the economy over the long run. We don't want to penalize people who want to quit their job and have the freedom to be able to move to another job, right? So there's going to be some unemployment, and that is the natural rate of unemployment. So we'll come back to that one here in a little bit too. All right, so that's our picture of unemployment. And our next one here, see if you guys hopefully starting to learn how to read some data here. So we got men to the left, women to the right. What has gone on with work behavior according to this data? What is that saying, Tim?
Over time, men started to participate less in labor.
Okay, yep. So men's going down, and let me go back here. Give me your name again.
Justin.
Justin.
That women started getting jobs, so less men were getting jobs, so they're
Okay, so men's rates coming down, women's rates going up. So are the women stealing the men's jobs? Do we know that for sure? Could we make that conclusion from this data? No, we really can't. What could be another reason that this one is going down a bit, this one's going up? That's not a story of women taking men's jobs. What do you think, Madison?
More women just wanted to work than men.
Okay, more women wanted to work than men. Okay, good. What else? Yeah, let me go back here. Zach.
Like more men are staying home, then more women are going to the workforce.
Yeah, good. So choices are different. So as we start to move in, you really start to see it here in the 90s. So all of a sudden, oh, honey, you can go make $200,000 as an attorney, and I'm just a bricklayer. So I'll stay at home, you go to work, right? And culturally, that was more and more accepted. And so we had kind of the women's movement over time of women's rights. And so over time, some of those decisions are this. As the economy grows, do we need more jobs or less jobs?
It depends.
We need more in general.
I was going to say automation.
Yes, but even with automation, the level of jobs could still continue to grow. But in some cases, they'd be substituted, but then there'd still be other emerging jobs in other places in general. So as the economy grows over time, the point is that we don't want to think about it, kind of what's called a zero-sum game, right? Where somebody wins and somebody loses. That doesn't have to be the case here because the economy has been growing over time. And that means we need more jobs. And so women entering the workforce is a sign of economic growth that men's jobs, number of jobs might have increased actually over this time period, but the fraction of men working fell slightly. Okay? All right, any other questions or comments here? All righty. Let's see, I think we got one more and then I might kill the screen here. Maybe two more, I don't know. Let's see what else we got. Okay, so here is the labor force participation rate and the employment population ratio 1980 to 2019. And so here is just everybody combined together, and we've got labor force participation rate, which I have over here, right? So labor force participation rate, everybody who's working plus people who aren't working but want to work, so the number of employed and unemployed as a fraction of the population, and the employment to population ratio. So first of all, how would you say these two statistics are correlated with each other? Positively or negatively? Positive correlation means they tend to move together. Negative correlation means they move in opposite directions. Would you say that these two statistics are positively correlated or negatively correlated? Positive, right? So when this one's going up, this one's tending to go up, this one's going down, so they kind of mimic each other, right? So that's a positive relationship between those two variables. What are the orange bars again?
Economic hardships or recession?
Yeah, recession. Yep, an economic downturn. So there's been, which I still haven't fully defined yet, but that's our economic downturn, and so we'd expect that. Now, what's going on, you guys, between, just kind of eyeballing like this range here, up to 2007-ish time frame here? What are people doing now since this 2010 to present? Has there been a shift in labor force participation?
Yes.
Yeah, it looks like it, right? So now we're starting to see how economists will start to look at data here. Over this time frame, it seems to be significantly lower than this time frame. So after this recession, which was the 2008 financial crisis, we did not see a rebound back to previous levels. So maybe there was a slight cultural shift with people thinking, you know what, we don't need both of us working, it's so stressful. We kind of learned how to live low when we went through some tough times and we lost our house maybe. And so yeah, we had that fancy house that we really couldn't afford anyway. We went through a bankruptcy, but let's kind of rethink the way we want to live if we want to be in that situation again, or maybe live a little bit more simple life. Now that's kind of an overall narrative that I'm not sure is really true or not, but something definitely is here, and so economists would try to probe that more, but this would just be one indication that there might have been something that changed. Okay, questions or comments on that? All right. Yeah, we'll kind of put this one up too. So here are those people that are unemployed. Why are they unemployed? Why are they not working? So dismissed from a previous job. What does that mean? Dismissed. You are fired. You're fired. So dismissed from a previous job. A layoff, how is that different than being fired? Tim?
Maybe the corporation had to let you go because he couldn't afford you.
No, that's not generally what we're thinking of there. Let's go to Zach.
Like a large group was fired or like.
Nope. Okay, let me go to Blake. We haven't heard from Blake yet. Business what? Went out of business. No, that's not that one either. So the business is still operating, usually with a layoff. Justin?
Maybe not because compared to being like being fired since what you're doing, layoff might just be because some other business for a reason that they have to get rid of X amount of people and they just happen to want them.
There's one thing, you guys are kind of dancing around the right idea, but there's one thing to hang your hat on, the difference between this one and this one. Let me go to Madison and then we'll...
Isn't it when like something bad happens to the company, like when Boeing and all that thing stuff happen?
Yeah, I mean, it can be bad stuff, but there's one thing that's different here. If you are laid off, what do you have the potential of having happen? If your company laid you off right now,
Unemployment?
unemployment and rehire is what I was looking for. The potential to come back. So the company's saying, hey, we're going to have some layoffs. We're having a general downturn. We're going through bad times. We've had doors flying off airplanes and losing bolts, and since you brought up the Boeing one. Whatever the case is, we're going to lay you off. We hope to have you back. We hope things are going to be good in 3 months, but I can't promise you anything. So I'm going to lay you off. By getting laid off instead of fired, then you can be eligible for some benefits of unemployment. If you get fired, you also have unemployment, but if you quit your job, if you leave your job, you do not get unemployment insurance. Did you guys know that? So if you tell your boss, I'm out of here, you can't get unemployment claims. So the only way you get unemployment claims is if you actually get fired or you're laid off. So that there's a connection there with getting the unemployment insurance.
I think you can get unemployment if you get fired.
Okay, raise your hand if you want to say something. So here we go. Job leavers are the ones that leaving, 13%, but a lot of them are through firing. New entrants is the college graduates, and then the re-entrants were people who left the labor force. That's the important part of here. If you're re-entering, what are you entering? You're not re-entering a job necessarily, but you're re-entering the labor force. So mom leaves the labor force to stay home with the kids until they start kindergarten. She's out of the labor force for 5 years. Then kids start kindergarten. I'm going to go back to work. I'm going to start looking for a job. She just became unemployed, right? So as soon as she starts looking for a job, she's now re-entered the labor force, but has not found a job yet. Remember, we're looking at the unemployed here. So these two groups make up 60-some%, and then we've got these other ones trailing in. Okay, any questions or comments? All right. So last one here. All right, so we got the civilian rate of unemployment, all workers, and then here's the breakdown. So who is the most unemployed? Who's got the highest levels of unemployment according to that data there? 16-year-olds up to 19-year-olds. So high school and then maybe college, freshman, sophomore, right? So that is our highest levels of unemployment. Remember, this is the unemployment rate, so they're wanting to work, but not working, right? So they're not finding a job. It's not like I'm a student athlete and I'm not gonna work while I'm in school. I wanna focus on my school and my athletics or something. These are people who want to work but aren't working. And then we have women in that category that are actually stronger than the men in that category in terms of having a lower unemployment rate. And then we've got the 6 versus the men. And then we've got the 25 and older versus the men. So, who has the lower unemployment rates, men or women? We've got unemployment rates. Yeah, the women, right? I mean, across the board, we have women at lower rates in each age category. And women, here's the total at 3.4 versus 3.6. Okay, questions or comments on that one? All right, let's get rid of this thing. I need my full board now. All right. So, let's talk about the business cycle. No, it's not. Yeah, if we were still under 3, yeah, we're done with number 3. Thank you. Yes. So this is a new topic. The chapter actually starts off with this topic, but I wanted to jump into unemployment first. So the business cycle of the economy. So this is the idea of the ups and downs, and the ups and downs, the business cycle is changes in GDP over time. We can look at both forms of GDP, but when we talk about this expansion and recession, we want to have the quantities, the first biggie. So this is actually going to be real GDP. So changes in real GDP over time. And so we're going to make a little graph measuring time on the horizontal axis and real GDP on the vertical axis. And so over time we go through these ups and downs, so you guys can just kind of do some cycles, maybe it's jig-jag, whatever. But have it going up. So in general, on average, when you draw it, make sure you've got kind of this upward trend. In other words, this straight line would be kind of the average movement of your line. And so we'll call this the trend line. If the trend line is upward sloping, then what's happening to real GDP over time on average? What's happening to real GDP? Increasing. And so what do we call that when real GDP increases over time? Look back to your three biggies, either from yesterday or from today. I think I said it yesterday, or we wrote it down yesterday. What do we call that when real GDP grows over time? Tim? Economic growth. So having this be upward sloping is economic growth. The economy is growing over time because the real quantities of beer, pizza, and chicken wings is growing over time. If we're flat, then there's no growth. And of course, if we're downward sloping, there's a decline in the economy over the long term, which would be bad. Now, we do have declines over different time periods. And so these ups and downs is what we want to identify here. And so the four phases of the business cycle, the first phase, or the first one I'm going to talk about anyway, we're going to start with the peak. So you notice that there's these turning points. And so this is known as the four phases of the business cycle. Four phases of the business cycle. Number one is the peak. This is the upper turning point. The upper turning point. And then we start going down. When we go down, this pays here until we get to this lower turning point. This is our recession. So the recessionary phase, number two, is recession. Now, by definition, a recession is a 2-quarter. How long is 2 quarters of a year? 2 quarters. 1/2 of a year. So how many months? 6. So 1 quarter is 3 months. So 2 quarter is 6 months. So a 2 quarter or 6 month, a 2 quarter decline in real GDP is how we define a recession. So if the government has collected information on GDP and it shows that it went down for 3 months, down for another 3 months, we call that a recession. Otherwise, it's just kind of a blip. Like, notice my little blip here, I went down a little bit and it kind of squiggled around. If that all happened within kind of 1 quarter and then it corrected itself, we don't call it a recession. So it has to be a continuous decline of 2 quarters in a row, a 2-quarter decline in real GDP. Then we define it as a recession. Questions on that? All right, so now we've got our trough. So the lower turning point is the trough. You kind of think of a feeding trough for animals at the bottom part. So the trough is the lower turning point of real GDP. We've gone down for 2 quarters, and now the economy has rebounded. And then finally, the economy's been growing all the way up to the next peak. And so this range here is the expansionary phase. So we have expansion. So number 4 is expansion. So increasing real GDP over the time. Kind of no 2-quarter decline, no 2-quarter decline over that time period. So even during this time, as long as it wasn't 2 years, even though it went down a little bit, it would still be part of the expansionary phase as long as there wasn't a 2-quarter decline during it. All right, so questions on the 4 phases? All right, so now you got the idea here of I've got a job, I lost my job. I got a job, I lost my job, right? So kind of that negative correlation between an expanding economy, expansion, and getting a job or having less unemployment. So as the economy moves through time, through these expansions and contractions, then we have a connection there with the unemployment rate. So let's write that down for our notes. Where'd my black pen go? Okay, so note, or let's put notes. Number 1, unemployment rate, big U, and real GDP are negatively correlated with each other. So an increase in real GDP, an expansion, leads to a lower unemployment rate. Okay, so you might be thinking, oh, well, this should be easy to, get this figured out on things we could do if we're going down. We could make some changes in policy or something. But GDP, as we learned from last week, I believe, is about 6 months behind in getting measured. So the second note I wanted to put up here is that there is a 6 to 9 month lag time of knowing what GDP is. So we're always looking backwards. So today, so example, what is today? The 25th? 6th. Okay, so today is 3/26 of 24. So you might be thinking, well, what's GDP for February? Don't know. What's GDP during Christmas time? We don't know. We have no clue. Well, we have a few clues, but not very good clues. Not enough to really even put it out there for the public to know of whether are we currently in a recession right now or are we in an expansion? We don't know. We don't know for sure. We might be right now at the start of a recession. This might be us right now, but we're not going to learn that until we're back over here somewhere because of this lag time. So today is 3/26, and we will learn whether we are in a recession or expansion in September. Let's just put 6 months from now. In 9 of 26/24. When we have data. So there's a lag time of learning where we're at. Okay, questions or comments there? Okay, that's kind of a pretty picture. We'll leave that. All right, so we have 3 types of unemployment. And these really relate to things we were talking about already on like why are people unemployed? We're going to define them into 3 categories. So number 1 is called frictional unemployment. Frictional unemployment. So frictional unemployment is unemployment that is due to normal labor market turnover. Through people quitting new entrants, re-entrants, etc. So one of the problems is like skill matching. So job search with frictional unemployment, matching skills of you with employers that want those skills. How do we find jobs? How do we make better matches? What do people use when they're looking for a job? What are some of the things in the real world now that are used in job search, whether you're an employer or a potential employee that's not working currently?
Like an app,
Okay, yeah, so certain apps that are out there now. So what are some popular ones? You guys have probably used them, some of you. LinkedIn, good. What else? Sometimes I lose track of which ones are being used, but have you heard of Indeed? Indeed is a big one right now, and I think that, I don't know if that played off of, there used to be I think that was called Monsters.com or something. It was a job search site. So sometimes they come and go and new ones come out, but this process of you knowing your skills and the employer knowing what they want has become easier over time. So some economists, I think, I don't know, I don't look at this literature that closely, but I think part of why we see unemployment rates maybe lower than they were before is due to this technology and communication innovation that we have. What was it like when I was your guys' age? I would get a newspaper from the Kansas City Tribune. I would go to the jobs wanted page. I would read what their job description was. Then I would potentially, I gotta make sure I was when I was your age. Yeah, that's true. It's when I was your age. I would have a resume typed up. We did have computers back then, so I would type it up. I would put it in an envelope, lick it, put a stamp on it, and send it in the mail. 3 days later, that employer would get it and receive the job application along with other ones. Somebody at their place would have to rip open the envelope, right? Pull that out, lay it out flat because it's all in 3 trifold, and then read it and start sifting through them. Now I kind of wanted to bring you through the whole process to think of what does it look like today. You're on Indeed.com. You already have a digital imprint of your resume. The employer's looking for you to drop it. You click the button. Does a real human actually first read your resume and cover letter? No, we got computers. AI is going to read that. They're going to search your resume, so the company gets 1,000 resumes in. They search for keywords in your resume, maybe where you went to school or what your major was, previous stuff. They're going to search for keywords. Do you know Microsoft Excel? Did you put that somewhere on your resume? The computer's going to automatically sort you into 2 piles of maybes, yes, and no's. And so no human being's ever going to look at some of those applications. And then finally a human being's going to take that, they're going to pop through and read through the actual resumes of the yeses. If they have enough yeses, they're not even going to look at the maybes. And that's the sorting process. So in today's world, make sure you got the right keywords, and you can do that research too. The point is that can happen all in a half hour, potentially, or an hour, compared to 5, 6, 7 days. And so the amount of frictional unemployment has probably shrank over time due to the advances in technology. Okay, questions or comments there? All right, number 2. Structural unemployment. Structural unemployment occurs when your job skills are no longer needed because things have become obsolete. So, job is no longer needed because of the product or service for that matter becoming obsolete. What does it mean for something to become obsolete? That's kind of a big word. Fernando, you want to take a stab? Decline? It's kind of more than decline. A little bit more. Yeah, is that?
Something's replaced it.
Something's replaced it, yeah. So it's no longer needed. So, the evolution of music is probably a really good example, even though there's been a rebound of vinyl records. But historically, vinyl records were it, right? If you wanted to listen to music, it was pretty much vinyl records, cassette tapes, 8 tracks, and then we move into CDs, right? How many of you guys own CDs here? Got a few. This was one of them here. This was probably from a computer, but so you have a few of those, and then we move into streaming, right? So the evolution of that has made cassette players obsolete. Or if you are the best VCR repair person, you don't have a job anymore, right? But back in the 80s, man, you could fix a VCR no problem. So jobs becoming obsolete. An example, let's just say of let's do the video. So streaming, movies replaces DVDs, which replaced VCRs. So VCR repair person is out of a job. They are unemployed. So they got handed their paycheck, their last paycheck, and said, sorry, we don't have enough business for you any longer. Horse and buggy. The list goes on and on. I just had my truck repaired by a guy in Pomona, and he was just telling me when we were talking a little bit after I paid him how he's not working on new cars anymore. So I usually take it to place in Ottawa, but this particular problem I had with the suspension, he dealt with. So he said, yeah, I don't even work on anything of the new cars, but the electronics and everything. So his skills as a car repair, auto repair, are becoming obsolete. So he can still work on old cars. He's still working at this point, right? But some of the skills as far as his ability to work on any car has gone down. So his skills are becoming obsolete. All right, so our last one then is cyclical unemployment. Cyclical unemployment. And this is unemployment due to recession of the economy. The ups and downs. I got a job, I lost my job. I got a job, I lost my job. Okay, so we'll wrap up today thinking about, is unemployment bad? Is unemployment bad? Probably. Is it always bad for the person who lost their job? In the short term anyway? Yeah, it sucks, right? You had your job, you wanted your job. I guess unless you voluntarily quit, that's a different story. But is it always bad? I still got a few more things for your notes. Hang on, we're not done yet. So, is it always bad? Which one of these three look like something that's good for a healthy economy? Is frictional unemployment bad, where we have an economy that's changing, people coming in and out. So this is good for the economy, good for a dynamic, growing, vibrant economy. Is structural unemployment bad or good for the economy? Is it good that we went from VCR to DVD to streaming? Yeah, right? Lower cost and everything. So this is actually good. Is this one good? This one doesn't feel as good, right? Because we just kind of, it just seems weird that it's kind of out of people's control, that we go through these swings. And so this is the one that we consider would be bad. And is there something that can be done with the cycles? So what we're going to wrap up with is the natural rate. So the natural rate of unemployment, which I'll do the symbol U subscript N, the natural rate of unemployment that we kind of hinted at earlier, is the unemployment rate when there is only frictional and structural unemployment. So we don't want to drive the unemployment rate to zero. A healthy, vibrant, growing economy is going to have some unemployment. So what our goal is to try to get around the natural rate. All right, now we'll call it a day. See you tomorrow.